Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hunter White, and today we are filming the first video in this series, which is monthly book reviews. So last month, December, I read the memoir by Tara Westover called Educated. It's right here. And I'll basically just be going over it, reviewing it, analyzing it, my thoughts, and my rating on it. So, well, without further ado, Tara was born in Idaho. She is the youngest of 7 siblings. And the first part that I want to read for you all is actually the first paragraph of her author's note, which says, "This story is not about Mormonism, neither is it about any other form of religious belief. In it, there are many types of people. Some believers, some not. Some kind, some not. The author disputes any correlation, positive or negative, between the two." I just found this an interesting intro or author's note just because, well, she was born in a Mormon family, and it just, I saw in one of her interviews that she said that her family was born so different from the rest that taking this small sample would not, like, overall give people a definitive definitive of Mormonism. And so I just thought that was a really interesting author's note. But so yeah, her father, he has really radical beliefs. Their kids, they don't go to school, they don't have birth certificates. Tara herself didn't get one until she was 9 years old. And so the next section that I wanted to read for you all from the book is is the second page of the prologue. And it's top of the page. I am only 7, but I understand that it is this fact more than any other that makes my family different. We don't go to school. Dad worries that the government will force us to go, but it can't. Dad worries that the government will force us to go, but it can't, because it doesn't know about us. 4 of my parents' 7 children don't have birth certificates. We have no medical records because we were born at home and have never seen a doctor or nurse. We have no school records because we've never set foot in the classroom. When I am 9, I will be issued a delayed certificate of birth, but at this moment, according to the state of Idaho and the federal government, I do not exist. And so, just reading about this way of living and the family she was born into was really fascinating. Also knowing that this was not even that long ago. It's just a really interesting take on life, I guess. And so, moving on to the next part that I wanted to read you all is now on page 146. Now 147. And this was, just to get some context, she saw her brother crash his motorcycle, and she called home, and her father told her to take her home because they always treat everyone's injuries themselves. And this was the first time she went against his orders and took her brother to the hospital. Sitting across from me is my father, and as I look into his worn face, it hits me. A truth so powerful, I don't know why I've never understood it before. The truth is this, that I am not a good daughter. I am a traitor, a wolf among sheep. There is something different about me, and that difference is not good. I want to bellow, to weep into my father's knees and promise never to do it again. But wolf that I am still above lying, and anyway he would sniff the lie. We both know that if I ever again find Sean on the highway, soaked in crimson, I will do exactly what I have just done. I am not sorry, merely ashamed. And so, I guess to give more context, this is actually more later on to the story where she actually does go to college. she was 17 years old when she first stepped foot into a classroom, which was a college classroom. And she is, well, changing from the way that she grew up in, and is kind of going between two different worlds, a world with her family and a world outside of her family. And just to read her experiences of her education that she chooses to go on, versus the experiences she had growing up as a young girl with her family, is just really, really fascinating. A fascinating way of looking at things. And so the fourth part that I want to go over is now when she is in the classroom. And I think this is one of the more defining moments of her undergraduate, where she has to read a part for the class and comes across a word she has no idea what it means. And so this is what happens. The professor called on me, and I read the sentence aloud. When I came to the word, I paused. I don't know this word, I said. What does it mean? There was silence. Not a hush, not a muting of the noise, but utter, almost violent silence. No paper shuffled, no pencil scratched. The professor's lips tightened. Thanks for that, he said, then returned to his notes. I scarcely moved for the rest of the lecture. I stared at my shoes, wondering what had happened, and why, whenever I looked up, there was always someone staring at me as if I was a freak. Of course, I was a freak, and I knew it, but I didn't understand how they knew it. When the bell rang, Vanessa shoved her notebook into her pack. Then she paused and said, "You shouldn't make fun of that. It's not a joke." She walked away before I could reply. I stayed in my seat until everyone had gone, pretending the zipper on my coat was stuck, so I could avoid looking at anyone in the eye. Then I went straight to the computer lab to look up the word, Holocaust. And so the people that she asked in the classroom thought that she meant it as a joke, when she really had no idea what the word Holocaust was. And this was actually a really, really like defining moment to me in the memoir, just because of how people reacted, how she reacted to the word, and how such a known word for most of us was just different, you know. And so there was so many times reading this memoir that made me think about life in a new perspective, knowing that there are people out there who do live like this, which I wouldn't say is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's bad in its own ways, it's good in its own ways. It's just an interesting perspective to learn about. And so moving on to the next section. This is one of the more standout sentences I read in the memoir, which is almost at the end of the book, which is on page 328. This one paragraph, but one sentence in particular. But what has come between me and my father is more than time or distance. It's a change in the self. And here's a sentence. I am not the child my father raised, but he is the father who raised her. And so Tara's experiences in her education has completely changed her perspective on life, completely. And her knowing that while her perspective has changed, her father's has completely stayed the same, is actually completely, well, it's just weird to think about. And so reading this moment, reading this sentence in particular for me was a interesting moment, because I realized how much she has changed over her years in education, and how much her father and the rest of her family really hasn't changed since they hadn't gone through the education she has. And so the final part in the book is a note on the text. And so this one paragraph I want to read to you all is like this. What I take from this is a correction, not to my memory, but to my understanding. We are all of us more complicated than the roles we are assigned in the stories other people tell. This is especially true in families. When one of my brothers read first my account of Sean's fall, he wrote to me, "I can't imagine Dad calling 911. Sean would have died first, but maybe not. Maybe, after hearing his son's skull crack, our father was not the man we thought he would be, and assumed he had been for years after. I have always known that my father loves his children unpowerfully. I have always believed that his hatred of doctors was more powerful. But maybe not. Maybe, in that moment, a moment of real crisis, his love subdued his fear and hatred both." And this was 2 paragraphs before the end of the whole memoir, and really made me think about perspectives of family members, and how it's not always how we think it is that it actually is. And so it just made me think about the whole memoir as a whole, and I really enjoyed it. It definitely brought me on a roller coaster of emotions, which is sometimes hard for me to handle, but I thought it was a really eye-opening memoir to read, and I'd probably give it 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely recommend reading it if you find it interesting after hearing this video. But yeah, I mean, this is my first book review that I'm doing, so it's a little bit rough, but this is basically what I'll be doing for most of the books I read here on out, is finding moments in the book that stand out to me and describing them, and giving my take on it, I guess. The next book that I will be reading for this month, January, is actually a book called Dopesick. There's actually a series on Hulu about it that I'm also watching currently, to get more info on that as well. Just look out for a Monday video where I'll read the summary of Dopesick, and the next book review will be the first Saturday in February, where I'll be reviewing Dopesick. But other than that, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.